Counselor Accents Podcast. Two school counselors who love their jobs. Oh, and they happen to have Southern accents too. Bless their hearts.
I'm Laura Rancourt.
And I am Kim Crumbley. And together we are Counselor Accents. And what a treat, Laura!
I cannot even believe who we have with us today. I can't even. You're just going to have to tell everybody because I am starstruck.
I'm going to tell you my nearest competition in Counselor of the Year 2020, Miss Laura Ross. So I need you to add clapping right here. And
I can do it.
The crowd noise. So Laura, welcome. We are fans, and as we said before, we feel like we are at Disney World and we are seeing we're seeing Mickey Mouse or somebody, and we're lying to get your autograph. So you are big stuff in the counseling world, and so we feel like it's just an honor to have you on here.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for the invite to be on here. And it's funny, Laura, you said that she's like, I don't know if you've heard our podcast. Here's Nick. I was like, of course I've heard your podcast. So,
oh my goodness.
Yeah, I'm excited to be here with y'all.
You're so sweet. So, Laura, tell us a little bit about you. We know a little bit because we're, I don't know, stalkers, but tell our listeners a little bit about yourself.
So I'm Laura Ross, and I work in Georgia. I'm in the metro Atlanta area, so a suburb of Atlanta. And I currently am at Five Forks Middle School in Gwinnett County. And this is my 7th year in middle school. Before that, I did elementary school for 8 years. So I love this world of school counseling. It took me a while to get here. I started as a counselor in a men's correctional facility for interned a year and then worked there for 2 years. I did foster care social work, clinical social work for a little while, and then thought I might do school social work, but realized it's school counseling that really, really wanted to be. So I got my specialist in school counseling, and
here you are.
Wow.
That
is so interesting. I know. What a variety. I mean, counseling, it seems like the heart of it was always there, but to go in those different directions, fostering, prison, and in the school system. So it sounds like you've brought a lot of experience. It does not look like you're old enough to me.
Nope.
You're just have such a youthful look, and that's a good thing. To tell me you've been in this for 15 years. And I'm interested in from elementary to middle. What made you make that change? Because we hear from a lot of school counselors who go from middle to elementary or elementary to high school, and sometimes by choice, sometimes not by choice. How did you make that change?
It was interesting. The first school I worked in was elementary school. I loved it. Actually, I'll take that back. The first school I worked in, I was an intern for school social work, and it was a psychoeducational middle school setting. Most of the students there had some sort of label of EBD and emotional behavioral difficulties, and so that's the first group of students that I worked with. But then I loved elementary school. I tell people now in middle school are like, "You were in elementary school?" I'm like, "Yes, I love puppets. I love picture books. I love all of that fun stuff." And then I just sort of thought, I wonder what it would be like to work with middle schoolers. That seems like it would be different and cool, but I always told myself, like, I don't think I'm cool enough to work in middle school with middle schoolers. And it turns out nobody's really cool enough in the middle schoolers' eyes, so it's okay. But yeah, I just decided to kind of take the leap and see what it would be like. It was just something that, I don't know, kind of intrigued me. So I've been here for 7 years. So
that is so neat, Laura. And I have done the high school, elementary, and the middle, and I say I was okay in elementary and high school because I could do the same picture book. But boy, in middle school, you you really have to watch. You're right. There is that cool element that you're always wondering, and you're right. You're never going to be cool enough.
I throw a picture book at them every once in a while, but
Yes, I
they'll
do.
take it.
They're kids, and even adults enjoy those. I say to myself, they may not act like they're enjoying it, but I really think that they are. So
that's the thing you have to in middle school realize they may, there's the, oh, I don't care, or
yeah,
I'm not into this, but really they are. I just learned this week that some of my middle schoolers still watch Barbie movies. So
Oh,
yeah. Well, Laura does too. So, so she gets that.
Kim, Laura, can you excuse us while Kim and I have a conversation for a minute? Kim, I love her. I love her.
I am in love more than you've ever been in love with her.
There's no way. I am just sitting here. You're hogging the floor. Let me just.
I'm gonna turn the talking stick over to you now. Let's take turns.
Thank you. But I'm sitting here listening, and I'm just like in awe and just so excited. So I'm going to try to form a question now. But Laura, I am very curious about how you thought that you were going to be in the school social work field, and then you realized school counseling. Talk to us about what differences stood out to you and why you landed in school counseling.
Sure. So, my journey is so weird. So I started college as an art major. I was an art major for 3.5 years, and much to the surprise of my parents, 3.5 years in, I was like,
Oh my goodness.
And I actually had spent a summer in Waterbury, Connecticut, working with a church up there and working with kids, and I would work with young kids, and I worked with a youth program, a summer youth program, and that's where I was like, okay, I'm going to switch to something. And I really did not know about school counseling, I guess. I remember I had a school counselor in high school, but I didn't have a lot of interaction with her. So it wasn't something that I thought of, oh, I could do that. I thought, I knew about social work. And then I learned, I could do school social work. And since I really wanted to be in schools, that seemed like it was going to be a fit for me. When I got into the program, I had a unique internship that I was at that one school. But that was in the district that I'm in now, is where I interned. That was not a typical thing that a school social worker did. They moved from school to school. And in fact, now our social workers have a cluster of schools. So like our cluster in our district, our social worker has a high school, 2 middle schools, and 4 elementary schools. And a lot of what they did, some crisis response, assisting with that when they needed to, but a lot of attendance and truancy stuff. And my experience in my internship was very much working directly with students one-on-one, doing small groups, doing classroom lessons, and all these things that I didn't know was school counseling. And my liaison from the university that would come and talk with me and meet with me told me, it sounds more like school counseling, and if that's what you're interested, check out this county, because they might give you a shot and to start while you go back to get a school counseling degree. So I applied in that county. I didn't hear anything. That's when I did a little bit at foster care, clinical foster care social work for a while. And that was maybe one of the most challenging things I had ever done. And then I got this call from this other district, and they said, are you still interested in being a school counselor? And I actually said to them, I was like, are you at the bottom of the filing drawer? It had been over a year. And I was like, absolutely, I am. And I went to this school, and it was this tiny little rural school, so small that they could only have one part-time counselor. And I interviewed, and they offered me the job, and it worked out because I had to go back and get my degree in school counseling. So that's kind of how it's this journey that I was like, discovered school counseling. I was like, okay, now how do I get in there? So, yeah.
So from that start to all of these accolades, That's a word, Laura.
That is a word, and you pronounced it correctly, unlike
You laughed at some of the words you do make up, Laura, but I see all these awards, and it just tells me that you love what you do.
Mhm.
You're at the top of your game, and you share that, and you're a great advocate for other school counselors. What would you say to any young counselor that or person that thinks they want to go into this field? What piece of advice would you give them?
I think I do love what I do. And the thing for me is always remembering my why for being a school counselor. And I think back to those men in the correctional facility and who were mainly gang members that I worked with. And I wanted to be in schools because to connect with those students and connect with all students. So they weren't looking for that place of belongingness and importance and self-worth somewhere else, like a gang. And so I think you have to know why you're doing this, and always remember that, because it's interesting. My principal always talks about, as educators, we have the hardest, best job. And I think that about school counseling, like it's the best career, I think, but it's hard, and there's challenges, and but I think if you have a strong why as to, and sometimes it's a really personal reason, maybe sometimes it's a good experience, sometimes a bad experience with a school counselor. I've heard that as folks' why, but really just knowing why you are in this, because I think that's what fuels that passion, and it fuels what you do for your students and your school community. It fuels, even when you're stressed and you're challenged, for you to keep going and, keep finding those things that are important for students. So for me, that's the biggest thing, is you have to have a really strong why and keep remembering the why behind being a school counselor.
Such a great answer.
It is.
Laura?
Well, I want to know about, we're coming up on National School Counseling Week, and Kim and I talk a lot about advocating for your program through that week. And you have something on here about school counselors as leaders. And I would like to know your thoughts on how school counselors, why we are leaders, how we position ourselves as leaders. Just let's talk about that and unpack it for a minute.
Sure. Yes, I use School Counseling Week also as really a big advocacy tool. I know some folks get upset and want, the star treatment or something, but
yeah,
I always say
Kim wants the star treatment.
I mean, it's not bad when you get recognized, of course.
It's good, but it's not what it's about, right?
Right. It is School Counseling Week and not School Counselor Week. So, and it is really a great way to just, put out there what we do. And I kind of fought the whole we're leaders thing for a while. I didn't want that. I didn't want that label or responsibility. I thought, I'm just going to, just be a school counselor and just do this. But the reality is that school counselors in the building, we have a unique knowledge and training that nobody else has. And so just in that fact alone, we have to be leaders. We know things and have experienced things and have been trained on things that nobody else in the building has been. So we have to be leaders. But I also think that we are in positions where, we have kind of a pulse on everything, and we can connect everyone, parents and community members and teachers and admin. And I think that, other support staff, I think that also puts us in a position to be leaders. And, we are often the ones who are looking at the whole school and all the data, and we are listening and understanding the whole child. I mean, other folks have really specific, if I'm teaching algebra, I'm teaching algebra. And yes, there's a component of connecting with students and building those relationships, of course. But a lot of that focus is on that content that I'm teaching. And so I think school counselors have that ability to see all those aspects of a student and really lead in that way. And sometimes it's leading by doing professional development, which that's the scariest thing to me, is to do PD in front of my staff. I could do it for a room full of strangers, but PD in front of my staff makes me really nervous, but I still do it. Sometimes it's just modeling for the teachers in lessons that we do in the classroom or how we interact with students. I mean, that's being a leader. Being on some of those formal leadership teams in the school, so there is a school counselor voice, I think is really important. And luckily, my principal finds that that's really important too, to have that school counselor perspective. So I'm on the local school council, on our leadership team, our instructional leadership team. And I think it's just about finding those spaces where, it could be just be a team talk, kid talk about a student, but how we as counselors show up in that and try to make sure we're advocating for the student, but also helping our colleagues see different perspectives, and the whole child is another form of leadership. So, I kind of fought that whole thing for a long time, and I kept getting the nudges. And so, it grows from there. I think that, we are perfectly positioned to be in front of our staff and do trainings with them, but also to share with other school counselors. And so that's something as well that kind of came with the leadership, moving more into leadership and being a leader in my school, is being able to also share those things with other school counselors as well. So that's also been a journey for me, one that I was reluctant, and it made me nervous. And I know it makes so many school counselors nervous. We just want to like do what we know how to do, work with students and not have to be that person. So it is a step out of the comfort zone. And my mantra for my life is follow your butterflies. So when you get that like nervous but kind of excited feeling, like the butterflies in your stomach, you just got to follow them, because something is gonna come of it. So that's what I tell myself: just follow my butterflies and just do it. So yeah, it can be a little bit nerve-wracking, but it's still what should be done, and it's necessary, and good stuff comes from it.
Wow, I know that is everything that you said. So needs to be heard by all counselors. And we do hear from counselors who do realize they should be leaders. And I think from what we're hearing, they're waiting on someone else to say, hey, would you speak? Hey, you are a leader. And so we encourage counselors to ask to be on those committees, to ask to speak, because then, like you said, once it gets started, it just kind of snowballs. And but if you're waiting on, so often when we're waiting on someone else to ask us to do what we should be taking the lead of and advocating, not for ourselves. You may be the only person, but advocating for your program. So that kind of leads me into comprehensive school counseling programs. I know when I started, I'm going to be honest here, it was what I call the willy-nilly. It was just, oh, that's cute. Oh, that's a good idea. But I will say school counseling has changed also. So it with ASCA and the national model and those kinds of things, it has made counseling, I think, so much more purposeful. So could you speak to us about counselors having that comprehensive program?
Sure. And I'm a sucker for the cute, and then I have to stop myself. I'm like, does this really go with what we should be doing? Although I do have I guess I will admit to being a bit of a hoarder, so I will buy like cute things that maybe I can use for like a group or something.
I think all today an educator
satisfy that.
Yes.
To satisfy that need. So, I think that, and I hear it a lot of times, and I get the dilemma and the challenge when you feel like you are at a school that's super high needs, a lot of maybe crisis, or you have a caseload that is just overwhelming, that comprehensive counseling feels like just another thing that you would do. But I would say, one, you have to look at it, a comprehensive counseling program, not as something you're going to just implement every aspect of it in a year, like that year. Like, it's not going to happen that way. And so you have to kind of break it down and sort of piece by piece get it started. But two, I would say a comprehensive counseling program is going to help you be more effective and efficient, especially when you have a lot of high needs, when you have a large caseload. So for here at Five Forks, there's actually 2.5 of us, but counselors. So we have a retired part-time counselor, but she handles all our MTSS, our student support team meetings, our 504 plans, our attendance meetings. So that's all she does. So there's just 2 of us that break up the grade levels in our school, and we have over 1,200 students. So our caseloads are at least 600 or more. But we have a comprehensive program so that we're able to reach all of our students, and we're able to be proactive in reaching all of our students through classroom lessons and school-wide initiatives, so that they're getting a lot of the strategies and skills and things that they would need. So that I'm in middle school, and yes, I deal with the quote unquote girl drama. I don't think I deal with it on the level that some middle school counselors do, because we're very purposeful in doing lessons. We do a whole unit on peer relations, and we talk about being upstanders, and we talk about peer pressure, and we talk about diversity and empathy, and we try to give them skills and knowledge so that they can, start implementing those things themselves. And so it's not a revolving door of this happened and then this happened and now this is happening again. And really having those programs in place so that all of our students are getting, those things. And then, building off of that. So our program, we very much look at that tiered, what all students are getting, what all teachers are getting to support all students. And then, looking at data, looking at the needs of our students as we've seen over time, to see who needs those like tier 2 small groups or other supports, and then those who are better suited for one-on-one or need something more intensive. And so that has helped us in managing our program so that 1, we reach all students, but 2, we have time and we have meaningful time to then support students who need even more intensive support from us. And so it's helped us, I will say as well, seeing what we can do with a comprehensive program and all the things we can do. It has helped us. We've never been tasked with a whole lot of extra duties, but we were at one point getting tasked with a lot of extra support for testing. And of course, testing is that standardized testing, like all hands on deck. Everybody is doing something. And so we know we're doing something, but we were being used for a lot of the somethings. And we were able to look at how much time we were spending on that in then our program, and really kind of negotiate back to something that was more reasonable. So I think that's the other great thing about a comprehensive counseling program. Once people see the impact you can make, they want you to have more of an impact. And so it also helps take away some of those extra things that would take away from you being able to impact the academics, discipline, attendance of students.
Well said. Well said. I hope counselors everywhere are hearing this and thinking about instead of the tail wagging the dog, the dog is wagging the tail, and that to me is what a comprehensive plan does. So you said it perfectly.
I think it takes time, and I think that sometimes people get frustrated. Well, I'm still doing this. And I was like, but it does take some time, and I think that you can't get overwhelmed with thinking you have to have all these things in place that year, because if you did that, you wouldn't do them well anyway. So I would say a key to a comprehensive counseling program that may also help is that advisory council, because the more people you can get on board to hear about it and to understand what you can do through that, the more push that you will have to make the other parts happen.
Well, talk to us about your advisory council, because I think that is a huge treasure trove of opportunity that people, I think it intimidates a lot of people to think about, and it certainly did me. It used to me. And I would just kind of run around the school and try to gather up as many teachers that I could. And then I realized the opportunity in branching out and pulling in business people and community people and stuff like that. So talk to us about how you use your advisory council and how you would recommend someone use their advisory council.
So yeah, it always, that's another one where I'm like, oh, when we first started, I was like, I don't want to do this. So we have usually a few community members. We try to have a parent from every grade level if we can, a teacher from every grade level, a teacher that represents connections classes or specialist classes, whatever level you're at, electives. We try to have a teacher that represents special education, and then all of our administrators are invited as well. They're specifically invited, but then we also sort of open up that anybody who wants to come can come. When I started doing advisory councils in elementary school, and even when I started at Five Forks in middle school, we would do the whole presentation. Here's our counseling program. These are our goals. This is what we're doing. Here's what we've done. Here's the data to show what we've done. All of this stuff, and it was just us talking out and presenting. And at the end, they're like, any feedback? And, we'd get nothing, or you're doing such a great job, which is great. Sounds nice, but it doesn't help us sort of evolve and improve. And so one thing, we started to implement a written feedback thing by like things that we were talking about. So that helped for a while. And then we changed to this model of really digging into one thing. So we would still do a really brief overview. This is what this group is. This is why you're here. This is what we hope we get out of this. Here's a quick overview of our program, but here's a piece of our program that we really want to dig into with you all to get all of those stakeholder perspectives. And one of the first ones we did was our peer relations unit of classes and things. And we presented to them data, some outcome data, some perception data. Some of it looked really great, but then, feeling like they could actually felt strong about applying those skills into a real life situation wasn't as great as their knowledge of it and exactly, if they knew what to do. So being able to, we made it so they worked in groups, and we kind of mixed them up so it wasn't all teachers at one table, and so they could have a discussion, and then they shared out, and then that caused more discussion in the big space with everyone. And really just getting, hearing from teachers, what are they seeing and hearing from students around peer relations? What are parents hearing at home from their students about how they're interacting with peers? Our community, some of our community members have been here since these kids have been in kindergarten and before. So they've seen them out and about and around the community for so many years. And so just hearing from them and seeing, what are they seeing out in the community and over time with our students. And so that's how we started doing our advisory council. So we usually kind of pick a topic and hone in on it and really brainstorm with them and get their feedback. And it's been invaluable for us to really get like that significant, meaningful feedback that we can implement. But two, it's helped us really to partner with others and really collaborate in ways that we weren't doing before. And it also, it's less scary because you give them a task to do and they talk about it and they share out, which has been pretty great. So you aren't presenting the whole time to them. But that's really how we've done advisory council the past few years. And that change has really made a difference in how that has worked in improving our counseling program.
I love that. Laura and I always say, make those meetings meaningful, make it meaningful. And what great rubber meets the road ideas that Laura just gave us about practically changing that so it's not just a meeting, which
Right.
So many counselors just find themselves as a checkoff that means really nothing. And so having those ideas, Laura, that you just gave to make that a really meaningful meeting and not to just, because otherwise you're just wasting your time. So it sounds like if you give them a job. And we've always said that give your advisory, that other than just listening, they need a job.
Absolutely.
And to feel a part of what you're doing. And that's so eloquently said and such a great idea. So talk to us about, we know equity is such a big topic right now. And Laura and I talk about windows and mirrors a lot. And we've had some eye-opening guests who have talked to us about looking at our own programs. How can we look at our programs and maybe make sure that they're equitable for all students?
I think for me, the big thing, there's two big things. And I think the first one starts with awareness. There's so much personal awareness that we have to have of what we bring into, our program, into our school, into our office space, just around how we identify and what our identity is, and then also what implicit biases and things that we bring in. And I think, in being trained as a counselor, that's definitely a part of what we talk about. But, that training, sometimes we forget things from years ago that were in a classroom. But I think that's always important to do. But I think also just awareness of your school, your stakeholders, who's represented in your school, what voices are being heard, what voices are being dismissed, what experiences and voices are just not even there to consider, and really looking at, I am all about, school counselors have a space in every little aspect of the school. So anywhere I can insert myself in, advocate for students or do something, because it may be in programming and scheduling and where students are scheduled and what coursework they're taking. And it may be, through what sort of interventions and supports they're getting that's academic, or how, different behaviors are handled, and that can look differently for different students. And so really paying attention to those things, but also what you can observe and what you're a part of, but also paying attention to the data and the awareness of what your data says, and disaggregate that and break it all the way down. I think those are big awareness pieces that we have to have first to see where the inequities lie, and be very specific in naming what they are. So for us, we year after year, we would break down that discipline data and our discipline referrals, and we had our Black and Latino males had the highest percentage of discipline referrals, but they did not make that high of percentage of our enrollment. And so there was a disparity there, and we had to look at it, we had to name it, and we had to then take some action. So that awareness, and then bringing it to the action piece. And so it started with, okay, as school counselors, what can we do? And of course, we were in our little school counseling bubble of, okay, small groups and these individual students, but we had to make sure and broaden that and go, and we're leaders in the building, and we know this information and everybody else doesn't know this information necessarily. So bringing it to admin's attention, bringing it to teachers' attention, and now what do we do as a whole school, which meant for us leading staff development around implicit bias and things like that, which I had all kinds of butterflies when I started doing that, because it's not necessarily something everybody wants to talk about or address or take on as being a part of the problem. And so, so I think you have to have all that awareness first, then to figure out the action part and making sure that your practices in your classrooms or your office or in the school are equitable. The procedures you follow are equitable, and middle school, so dress code is always a thing, and are those equitable across the board for everyone? And so just starting to look at all of those pieces. And this year I'm working with a group of stakeholders beyond our advisory council. We have a adult building equity leadership team that is starting, And our student one, our junior building equity leadership team has already started, and that's their invaluable information to hear from them and their perspective. You know, this is all for them. So, you know, what are they experiencing that feels like it's inequitable, and what ideas do they have? And they have ideas of what could be different, and what they would like to see change. And then also hearing from our parents, guardians, our teachers, and what they are seeing, and trying to make those improvements. But I think that's a part of our awareness piece, and they certainly can help with our action piece. But it's just hearing all the voices, knowing your data, knowing your own personal identity and biases, are the huge pieces in equity, and knowing your school, and your stakeholders, because the action piece depends on all of that. You know, so what you do to make things more equitable, really, you know, there's no prescription, a way to do it that's going to work for everyone. So, you know, there's ideas out there, and you can take them and tweak them, but you have to have that awareness first, I think.
I can see why she is counselor of the year.
I know. Let me say, ASCA, you made a very good choice. I agree.
Thank y'all.
Well, let's talk about your school counselor of the year journey. How did that start, and where did your year take you? And just tell us everything so that we can prepare when Kim is the school counselor of the year.
I need to get prepared for next year. Tell me is there a crown? Laura, I need to know.
There's not a crown. There's not a crown.
Oh, well, that's
there
why I'm not
this.
doing it. That's why I'm not doing it. They asked and I said no.
Where is this?
Really?
Ooh, look at that.
It's from Tiffany.
Oh,
that's
goodness.
Okay. Very nice.
Yes, the award is from Tiffany. I was like, what? So this really started in my district, in Gwinnett County. We do our counselor of the year. We do it by level: elementary, middle, high school. And I was, are you gonna apply for middle school counselor? No. Why would I do that? And I was just getting question and pressure. And my co-counselor and my principal. I had a friend who worked in Georgia and moved to Wisconsin and was working up there, who called down to my principal and said, "You have to make her apply." And I thought, okay, this is never going to end. I will apply for the district. So then I got the district middle school counselor of the year. So then I moved to Georgia, the state one, and I won that one. And so then one person from each state goes for the national, and ours is sort of backed up. So mine was really spread out. For ASCA, the National School Counselor of the Year. So yeah, I had to do an application, a video, and what else? A resume, and it was, you know, I submitted that. That was a lot of work, but then I got called as a finalist. I got the call from Brian Coleman, who told me I was a finalist. He said I was way too calm about it on the phone, but I just was like stunned, I think. And then I said, after I hung up the phone is when I cried and like went yelling to tell people. And so then we had to go up to Virginia to the ASCA headquarters and interview. So there was a whole group of folks, some principals, some practicing school counselors. There was somebody from NACAC.
Talk about butterflies.
Yeah. So we went up, all the finalists. We stayed. They put you in this like super cute boutique hotel, and then you have. The cool thing is that you get to have dinner and breakfast with this group of people before you do the interview. So it's a little bit. You're a little bit more relaxed because you've talked, but also the whole time I'm like, this whole thing is an interview.
Exactly.
Right. And ASCA staff is there. So we did the dinner, you do your headshots, and then the next day is breakfast and then interviews. And then if you're not interviewing, they're taking you all around town, taking pictures of you. And then you leave that day. And we have lunch. And then when the interviews are done, we all leave. And they decide, I now know because I've been on the other end of it, that day.
Oh,
So yeah, before they leave that day, they decide. And so yeah, and I just came home. I actually had GSEA conference right after that. I was home for like a day, repacked some stuff, and then drove to the conference. Yeah, and so he was like, "Wow, what, did you get it?" And I was like, "Well, one, they don't tell me." Because they always do like a surprise thing or whatever. But yeah, so it was a really cool process. They treat you so awesome along the way. But yeah, it was also kind of intimidating. And yes, I had lots of butterflies, but I was just like try to zen myself out. I'm not like scattered and yeah. So
what's next for you, Laura? I mean, you've attained the top award for school counseling in our world. So what's next? Where do you see yourself going from there?
You know, people are like, are you going to go to the district? Are you going to do that? I love kids. I love being a school counselor. So I don't see myself doing anything where I don't work with kids. I'm doing some more leadership stuff in my district and in my state. I'm on the executive board for GSEA right now, but recently was elected. So in July, I will be president-elect of GSEA. So I will take on that big leadership role.
Wow.
And still doing speaking and stuff at different states, SEAs and things like that. So there definitely is an opportunity to sort of expand how I support other school counselors. But I also still really want to make sure that I'm also a school counselor and focusing on that because I love the kiddos. So.
Well, I feel like we know you so well now. You're one of our friends. And if you would like to co-host a podcast.
So, let me tell you, I could fit in. So I've become really good friends with Brian Coleman, who decided that I have this really strong Southern accent. And so he started talking in a Southern, and I'm like, what are you doing? He's like, he said, that's you. And I was like, no, it's not. I was like, I don't sound like that.
Don't hear it. We don't hear it, but other people do.
But it's so funny. And so I told, like, oh, I'm going to be on Y'all's accents. I'll fit right in according to you. But then I thought, however, when I am around people who have a stronger accent than me, I go into it also. So he'll probably be like, see, you did.
You're one of our people then.
Yeah.
If you can fall right in with any accent, then you're one of our people. I hope that we get to meet you in person in Vegas.
So.
Are you going? Yes, we hope.
I mean, I booked the hotel room. I'm not bold enough to book the plane
Right.
But
yes.
the hotel room I have, I hope so.
I am hoping that I get my vaccines, and then I will. And if it looks like it's a go, I will be on that plane with Laura. And we've not been together like in the same room.
We're like 10 minutes apart, but we haven't been in the same room together since January or February of last year.
We talk, but we're talk daily and we Zoom. But so I have a little boy that I'm being very careful with. So I'm hoping that we can see you in Vegas. But Laura, are you going to act like you know us? Are you going
of course.
Of course. Well, we're going to hold you to. We're going to embarrass you, Laura.
I don't know.
Laura!
I'm going to embarrass you first. I have made a scene at an ASCA conference meeting somebody for the first time that I had only like talked to on social media or something, and just scream. So, and everybody's like,
oh my goodness.
Laura, you are getting more Southern as you talk. I will bet you said first.
First.
So you're going to have to go detox after you talk to us. We love you, and we're so proud of you, and what a great advocate you have been. you are out there doing great, leading us to do greater things. And I think that's what a school counselor of the year should do. And you're so humble and so sweet.
You are.
Oh,
And you're like the whole package, because you're not about yourself and your accolades, as Kim says. You're not about all that, but you've done so many amazing things. But at the heart of it is the love that you have for the students. And I just want to say it again, ASCA, way to go. You picked the very best.
Yeah.
Oh, thanks. Y'all are too sweet.
Thank you for joining us.
Absolutely.
A huge honor. Was she not the best?
She was. I was so struck by her the passion for this career, but her humility. She's just so humble, and she's just somebody I would rather hang out with than you.
Well, I'm going to tell you, you were so nice to her, and you would add her name, Laura, which also happens to be my name. And I'm going to cut that and just splice it together and play it over and over again, how nice you were with her name. Laura, you're so smart. Laura, you're so great. And I'm going to play that as I go to sleep to remind myself that you think I'm something.
I do think you're something. I'm not going to let you know how much I think you're something, but I think you're something.
Well, it's time to share stories or tips or whatever. And I have one that was inspired by something she said, and I would like to share it.
You may.
I would like to tell the story. When she was talking about School Counselor of the Year and the journey and everything that they did on their overnight stay for their interview, when she said the word headshots,
I know what your story's going to be.
And I just think, I think we need to share it with our, we need to share this story with our audience. So, Kim, jump in on this story at any time. But when we went to Boston for the ASCA conference, they were offering
to get your headshots.
Yeah, you could get your headshots to add to your school counseling paraphernalia or whatever. And so you and I put on our best 3-piece business suit and got all dressed up. We stood in line.
Our hair could not have been higher southern. I mean, it was like
the sequins. Yes, and the sequins that I had on would put Dolly Parton to shame.
Absolutely.
And so I remember we stood in this long line, and this poor fella taking pictures when we walked up there. Both of us together. He had a very confused look on his face, and we did
10 feet tall. I'm 2 feet tall.
So what a challenge that was! With not only am I 10 feet tall, but my hair is 3 feet tall. And
how are we going to get in the same frame?
So he looked at us when we said we'd like to get ours made together. He looked very confused, and then he sat me down, and you were, I think, posing on my shoulder. Your hands were.
It was like the worst. If you could picture the worst 80s photos, like where you would go to Owen Mills, think about it, and you had the studio background and the family photos where the husband is, or the wife is putting her hands on the husband or whatever, and that I had my over your shoulders like an Owen Mills bad. It was like that game, the worst photos. So anyway, why we did that, I do not know, because I laughed.
We're not even at the same school.
Why?
But it made me laugh. Like, as she was talking, my mind went there, and I went down memory lane on the headshot thing. And what must the people behind us have been thinking? If you were behind us, then we're sorry, but just know that now we realize how dumb it was. But I'm also thinking that if one of us is ever nominated for School Counselor of the Year, we have to do it together.
And I say when one of us, and you know who that one would be.
Oh, I know. And thank you. Thank you.
They're going to have to cut one of our heads off.
But I was thinking there's no way that we could do it by ourselves, and we would have to submit that double headshot and be like,
we would be like one unit. And it's like when at Boston, it was like we ain't never been nowhere. We would not be separated at all. And I don't know, do I want to save the story of me getting up and looking out the window and seeing a robbery taking place outside?
oh my gosh.
You want me to wait on
Go
that?
ahead and tell it. Let's just unpack Boston, part of Boston.
So we wake up because we're thinking about because she just talked about this, it makes us think about it. So I wake up one morning while you were snoring to beat the band.
Well, I stay up late. We work different shifts.
Different shifts. So I'm first shift. So I get up and I look out the window and I say, Laura, wake up. There is a man who is running down the street and he is climbing up the side of this building. It was like directly abutted to our hotel. And I said, he's running around and the police are looking for him. And I see him. And the police were running around looking for this fugitive. And said fugitive. So I'm like, Laura, get up and call 911. I see the man. Call the police.
I'm rubbing sleep from my eyes and pulling my retainers out and whatever else I've got, my headgear, whatever else.
And so the kerchief and all the stuff you get a bed, the little nightcap and everything else. So anyway, I'm banging on the window. I'm doing everything to lead police to the fugitive who was up on the building because we were not in the best location, which made all the funnier on this trip. But finally, the police spot him, and we videoed. It was like then it got into a bad. They are talking, and he decides he's going to jump off, and I'm like, this is our wheelhouse. We need to stop this. How am I going to get down here? Stop and help him because we're helpers. Mm-hmm. And so he gets to the edge. It was intense. And we're screaming as we're watching. This does not happen in our little country, rural area where we get to see anything going down like this. So, I think we were praying. We were praying for the man.
Yeah.
We were praying that he would not jump. So these wonderful policemen, they talked him down. But I'm telling you, it was just an adventure. There are so many stories that that is not the only one.
That's not it.
Adventure, but that was such an adventure.
Well, and the realization of how country come to the city we were is on the flight home. I had my phone out before they tell you to put your phones up, and I'm Googling Boston man about to jump off parking deck. And you said, what are you doing? I said, well, I'm Googling to see if any of the news channels are carrying that story. And you're like, Laura, that is not new. Like that would be huge news for the whole year where we live.
Yeah.
But in Boston, that was just, the morning.
Every day. It was just part of it. But anyway, that was such a great.
And it just makes me so, this is a really bad segue, but it makes me so excited about ASCA in Vegas this summer. Just like, I hope we don't see anybody jumping off buildings. See what I mean with the bad segue? But I am excited about traveling with you again. And
just traveling, period. I don't care where we go.
Yeah.
But yes, I would love to. And I hope all of our listeners get to go to Vegas. And we are hoping to have a meet and greet so that we can laugh and see each other and just be together. So instead of this, through our podcast, but actually get to meet our listeners. So that's in the plans.
Yes.
Fingers crossed. All right.
Find us on Facebook, find us on Instagram, rate and review the podcast. And is there anything else? I always ask you. We never know. We need to make notes.
Make plans to go to ASCA. If it's as soon as the word is out, let's all make plans to meet. So,
and we will be throwing some more information out there, maybe on our website, counseloraccents.com, or in our Facebook group, Counselor Accents group. And, we'll try to get a number as it gets closer and we make sure we're really going to get to go.
Yeah.
All right. We'll talk to you guys later.